I see a lot of movies alone. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. Started a couple years ago when I took my nieces and nephew to go see the movie Frozen. You may have heard of it. And as I'm walking out of the theater, it's a bunch of kids, small kids, and their parents, and me. I'm like the only person my age in the entire theater. So it just seemed like everybody who was leaving the theater just had nothing but good things to say about it. There's just joy. There's just so much joy on all their tiny little stupid faces. I don't think it's wrong to critique things. You know, I did that for a long time. I critiqued a lot of things, and there was no reason for me to be doing it. I didn't actually get any enjoyment out of critiquing. It wasn't like I was critiquing things so that I could, you know, be a better filmmaker myself or any other. There was no positive reason. It was just me critiquing to critique because I just couldn't sit and enjoy a thing. And so when I went to see Frozen, it shifted my perspective on that I realized I could just enjoy a thing. Well, what usually triggers those critiquing moments? And I started thinking, well, every time I go see movies with people, they're always just super opinionated and everybody has to say something about something. And so I was like, well, what if I just stopped seeing movies with people? And I did that. I did that for like almost a year. I just didn't see a movie with anybody else. And it became my thing that I just would go to the movies by myself. Wouldn't tell anybody, wouldn't say anything, just went by myself. And it's, to this day, probably the most enjoyment I've ever gotten out of movies. I think it's because it became sort of this like, movies were renewed for me, so it's almost like the reigniting of a honeymoon stage, you know, of just, oh, this is new and it's fresh and there's no outside world. It's me in my bubble with my romantic idea of movies. And I wanted to go back to that, to the magic of movies, the whole reason that they exist, to be entertained, to be taken to a different place, to be removed from this world and put into another one, whether fictional, historical, whatever it is. Critiquing most stuff is not a positive thing for me. I don't ever critique things in a positive way. Maybe that's just not in me. I get too critical and I overthink. So for me to just be able to go to a movie, like any movie, like I went and saw Fast and Furious 7, old me would have torn that movie to pieces before I ever got to the theater. But I went and saw Fast and Furious 7 with Olin and Rachel, and I had a blast. It was amazing. It was like just this really silly, they're jumping cars between skyscrapers. That's absolutely ridiculous and completely absurd. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. And so now I just enjoy movies. Just all of them. Like every movie I saw friggin' Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by Michael Bay, a director who's despised nearly as much as Nickelback. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I just sat there. I was like doing something else. It was like on in the background. It was like, you know, it's not a good film, like objectively speaking, when you look at, you know, the dialogue and all that stuff. But as far as like an entertainment thing, you know, it's a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fighting the crime. So I couldn't be, you know, how critical can you be of that? It's what it is, and I enjoyed it for what it was. If you get enjoyment out of critiquing things, or you think there's value in it, keep critiquing things. Like I said, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be critical, but just it should have a purpose. If it doesn't have a purpose, you're removing your own potential to enjoy that thing. And that's just why. Ask yourself the question, why are you doing that thing? Because it seems, now looking back on it with hindsight, it seems really stupid to remove my own enjoyment of a thing so that I can then not enjoy it on purpose. That's so stupid. I'm looking at every movie through the only lenses that I have, my own perspective, my own circumstances, through my eyes. In the same way, every person is flawed, and I can only view them through my own lenses. And it's given me a different perspective to be able to be non-critical of people, not entirely, but just to enjoy people more and not to always take all of their flaws so personally, because 99% of the time people are not being the way that they are to hurt me or to be obnoxious. They just are what they are, and to realize that I'm the same way.